So welcome everyone to our webcast. Our presenter today is Ray Olson. Ray is a senior technical training engineer here at RAN 3D. He has extensive experience consulting and training in CATIA. He's also a certified CATIA V5 part design expert as part of Dassault Systèmes Certified Professional Program. So we welcome you, Ray, as our presenter. I'll pass things over to you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yes, today our look is going to be into the machining workbenches of the CATIA software and taking a look at one of the objects that we create in the NC cutter path machining world, which is a machining operation, and how we can better customize that for our own use. So we're going to be taking a look at how to retrieve these customized operations from a catalog, and I'll kind of be showing that first. And then we'll go through the steps necessary to place one of your custom machining operations with all the necessary settings such as macros and step over distances or even offset amounts already set to what you prefer to use, and how they can be associated to our actual tool catalog, which would be our cutting tools. So whether it be a 1/2-inch end mill, a number 4 center drill, or a reamer, or just any type of cutting tool, is important to have that catalog, at least minimum of one catalog created before we head down this road here. So we'll take a look at that now. And how I'd like to begin is to first show other methods besides using a catalog to capture already existing machining operations. Of course, the standard method in creating a machining operation, which most of you are already very familiar with, the idea of being able to just go over and click on an icon out of the toolbar and add it, and then have the menu come up and you go through and you fill in all the necessary information. But you'll find that what ends up here many times as defaults are usually the Dassault Systèmes standards, and you may want it to default to your own settings on a regular basis, and you may want it to have to show up with certain macros for approaching and retrieving or getting the tool to the work and away from the work. So we want to show that you could create some of your own custom machining operations and find yourself using this toolbar less and less that's over here where the standard machining operations having to exist. So, of course, one method is to just copy and paste. The idea that, let's say you have multiple machining process files already open, and you're working away on maybe this object here, and you've decided you want to reuse a machining operation that you created earlier. Well, one of the things you'd have to do is, of course, go into the file open and open up the file that has that machining operation you want to reuse. Then you'd have to find your way to that item, and then you'd expand the tree out and locate it, and then you'd right-click on it and try to do a copy, and then you would make your way back to the actual process file where you're doing the programming, and then you'd right-click here and try to paste. Now, what you'll probably end up with is an error message, and the reason for that is usually by default when you copy and paste operations, there's an area in the Tools Options, which I'm going to make my way to now. I'm going to go to Tool Options. And in the Tool Options where we manage many of the things within the software, we're going to work our way down the tree here until we find the Machining branch. By selecting on the Machining, we can then work our way across to the Operations tab here, and then we could locate this When Copying option within the Tool Options area. And where it says Duplicate Geometry Links, we would remove that. Because what happens is when that's turned on, the system is trying to keep a link with the geometry that's been identified in the Geometry tab, and when it's trying to do that between machining process files, it's trying to actually take the surfaces and solids and so that exist under the product branch of the tree and bring them into the process that you're currently working on. So that's why you get that error message. So you can toggle it off, and then you say, okay, because the idea is that there is times you'd want that turned on when you're copying and pasting inside of a current process, but when you're copying and pasting between machining processes, you want to turn it off. So then you repeat the task again and make your way back to that file and right-click here again and say copy. And this time now when you bring it over, it actually is a little bit more successful, and that you are able to right-click here and then paste it without getting the error message. But now you think, well, now I'm going to copy and paste within the operation, so I have to remember to go back here to Tool Options and put that setting back to the way it was, so that if I copy and paste within operations, I have it the way or within a process file, I have it within to the setting I need. And that gets to be a hassle. So even though you can do that, the software really was never designed to do that efficiently. And that's not what the writers of the software envisioned how you would accomplish something like this. So what I'd like to show is the focus of why I wanted to show storing machining operations into a catalog so we could retrieve them from there. So one of the advantages of having them in a catalog is that we don't have to switch between windows. I don't have to go out and find what cat process file has my standard machining operations in. I can stay right within where I'm working. And the toolbar that's going to be involved here is we are going to be taking a look at a toolbar called Standard Machining Processes is its name. And this is one of the methods that you use to retrieve items, or I should say machining operations that happen to be stored in a catalog. You can also accomplish it from another toolbar, which is the Auxiliary Commands toolbar. There is a little picture of a catalog there, which is another way to accomplish it. The catalog method is not my preferred method because it does require many times that you have to have your geometry that you're going to machine already identified as a feature. So I don't find it as flexible as the method that I'm going to be demonstrating, so I'm just going to put that back, which is we're going to focus on this one here where the machining process application allows me just to bring in a machining operation and not have to worry about do I have a feature already existing or prior to bringing the operation into my current process. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this. And then from here, it will remember the last catalog I accessed that has the actual machining operations, and I can switch that. And at the top of the menu, I can actually select the necessary geometry that I want the system to try to establish a link to if needed. But that's completely optional. That's why I kind of prefer this menu over using just the icon of the catalog. So what my goal here is, and I'll just cancel this for a minute and then come back to it, is we need to chamfer the edges of this tooling plate. So it's very common that many times those items aren't actually modeled, just for the same reasons why we don't model the threads of a half-inch 32, or excuse me, half-inch by 13 threaded hole. It just takes way too much resources, and it's not unusual in tooling that there might be just a general note that all sharp edges are to be chamfered or at least rounded over, or years ago we just use a file and break the edge so that there's no sharp edges there for somebody to accidentally get cut on if they're handling, they're moving this tool or assembling this tool. So what we're looking to do is we just want to take a cutter and go around here and just use a chamfer tool and just break the edge. So there's no actual geometry, as I zoom in on this for a moment, that actually shows that chamfer, because generally it's just a note that's maybe a drawing that says break all edges by a certain amount. So this is a standard item that we like to do on a regular basis. So I place that machining operation to accomplish that into a catalog. And I'm going to retrieve those now. And the first item I'm going to do are the large diameter holes, let's say. And then I'll do the edges. So in the case of the holes, because I took the approach of using two different machining operations here. For the things that are perfectly round or circled, it works well to use one of the axial operations, which is the circle machining. For the other edges of items, it actually works better to use the profile contouring command. So I've kind of broken them into two major categories. There's things that are round and things that are not. So I'm going to do the things that are round first. And to identify the areas where I want to actually put the chamfer on, is I'm going to identify those as a drilling pattern. So I'm going to use the feature toolbar to select the actual locations. Go here and say no point, and I'll just select the edges of these holes here as locations that we want to actually chamfer the edge on. Then I'll just double click to end that and then give it a name. In this case, I'm just going to call it chamfer, and let's make it circles. Very good. You can say OK to that, and now that feature has been built. So I can retrieve that feature at any time by going to the Feature Management toolbar and using View Features, and then I can right-click here and be able to view my features by patterns, and then that way I can actually see the pattern right down here. So now I'm going to bring in the machining method that I want to use to chamfer those edges. So I'm going to activate. So I'm actually accessing the catalog now. And from my catalog, I'm just going to select that I want to chamfer these counter bores. I decide where I want to insert it in the tree. That's where the insert level happens to be, which is right here. And the items that I want to chamfer are these locations that I selected earlier. So in this particular example, I do happen to be selecting geometry that I want to associate to the operation, which is completely optional. For the next one, I will not do that. We'll go here and we'll say OK, and then it goes ahead and drops that into the tree. So now that that's in place, I can then double click on this. Because I am using a circular milling operation, I do need to set the bottom of the hole to actually the top of this plate. Otherwise, what circular milling does by default is it usually does the bottom of the hole. And then if I do a quick replay on that, it'll then circle each one of those locations with my chamfer tool. So it comes in and does a circle there. So because I retrieved it from the catalog, it already has the settings in place to offset the chamfer tool to the edge and to drop it down where I need it. So that way when I go to my video replay and hit the play button on that, I have now the edges chamfered on those particular features. So the advantage of using the circular milling is that when you are dealing with circles, it can be a little faster way than having to select the individual edges of each area. But unfortunately, this only works for circles, and that completed that portion of it. So I'm going to say OK, and that's taken care of. Now for the next area, I'm going to do the edges around here. So that's why I stored another machining operation for managing those locations. Okay, so we go here. And so from here, I'll select that machining operation and then decide where it needs to go in the tree, which is right here. Now I'm going to leave this area blank because that's what I like about this method here is that using this top area is completely optional. You don't have to fill that in. It can be a fast way of just dropping that operation in there. So that way I'm not switching windows. I'm not trying to find what CAT process actually contains my standard machining operations. And one of the items, even though you could just copy and paste it, that's all that type of an approach could ever do. It really can never take advantage of any of the other capabilities that are available within the Workbench. So this method has some additional things that we can do in the future to automate things if we wish, but we don't have to do them right at the beginning. So now that this operation exists, I can just double click on it. And what this is, it happens to be a profile contouring operation, and we've used the mode area to switch from between two planes to between two curves. Because between two planes, it always wants a plane where the bottom of the tool is going to follow, and then it wants an edge, and that really doesn't fit for driving a quick chamfer tool around something. So by switching it to the other mode, which many times people a lot of times don't even realize the mode option is here, not realizing that there are different ways of being able to use the profile contouring and taking advantage of just 2 curves. Now it says 2 curves, but the second curve is completely optional. So all I have to do is select the graphic to tell it I want to select an edge, and then the idea is that I can come in here, select this edge, then use the navigate tool. Actually, I want to navigate the other direction, so I'm going to click on the arrow. There we go. Swap that around, and then I need that. I don't have to have it closed, but I want to have it closed there, so I'm going to use the close contour button to close that. I got the arrow pointing to the correct side, and basically now that one is done. That one's ready to be chamfered. So I could actually just hit the replay and replay that one again, and there it is. So now I have another edge here that I want to chamfer. So I could either just copy and paste this operation, or since I have this toolbar already here, it's not that many steps just to click on that and just go here and select the operation from here that I want to insert it here, and then say OK. And it has everything set up the way I need it. I'm not coming over here and clicking on one of the standard machining operations where then I have to go in and start adjusting all kinds of things. I now have it ready to go, so all I have to do now is double click on it, select on this feature here, select this edge here, do the navigate around, and then say OK. And then that one is done. I have that one chamfered. I'm going to do one more and I'll be finished here. Say OK to that. So I'll click on the icon again, select this area to insert, select that this is the operation I want to grab, and say OK. And now that's been added to the tree. So then I can double click on this operation. Now I want to do this outside edge all around the outside of the plate. So instead of just left clicking and selecting this edge, I'm going to actually right click on it, and I'm going to use an option called boundary of faces. What this will allow me to do is select a single trimmed smaller area in our part, which we call a face, and the system will just find the outside boundary of that. So by clicking here, I can then click the top of this, and then just with that I'm finished. The system is going to see that this face represents the top of this 3D solid, and it's just going to use the perimeter of that face. It'll ignore the holes in the inside, which we refer to as inner domains. So that's a separate domain, so those are ignored. We go here and say OK, and then I hit the replay on that, and then the system just goes all the way around, chamfering all those edges for me, as it accomplishes that way. So with that, I'll say OK, and say OK to that, and I have my operations created. So my goal there was to really just show some of the benefits of being able to construct it in that manner. So to wrap this portion of it up, as far as this part of the demonstration, I'm just going to activate the video replay. And from the video replay, I'll just have it replay through continuously. There we go. So it's finished. And my goal here is I wanted to check the size of this chamfer. Now, this chamfer is not actually modeled on the part. This is just something that was a general note. So the only time it even shows up is during the video replay, and that's it. So how do you measure something like that? Because it's not there when the toolpath is being done. It's not actually on the part itself. So I actually need to be able to measure in the video. So I am going to accomplish that, and I'm going to use this button in the video replay. Now this does involve an additional product. So the standard machining workbenches most of the time do not come with this additional product, which is NVG, which is actually for the NC verification number 2, NVG. So some companies have it as a floating license that they obtain in the shareable area when they're in the tool options area. Others decide to do this in other software too. So if you see this area grayed out, it may be in the video that you don't actually have the NVG license. But I'm going to use the measure item, and with the measure item, I'm going to be able to measure that chamfer. So I'm going to use the measure between, And with the measure between, I'm going to select this edge here, and then select this edge right here. And then the system is telling me I'm roughly about 0.0624. On the drawing or the specifications I received on this, they requested that all chamfered edges be broken by 1/16 of an inch. So I'm about 1/16 in that direction from there. And then I could take another measurement from possibly this edge here to maybe the top of this edge, and I'm roughly about 0.067. That's pretty close to a 16. So I'm in the range where I want to be. So I'm going to end that. There we go. So now that you've seen these actually being used and retrieving items, so the next item I wanted to show is how do you actually build these? How do you create them? There are two main mechanisms that are involved, and one is the tool catalog where you actually store cutters, and the other is just simply opening up an empty machining process and placing the operations in there. So in the case of taking a look at creating these, is you are going to need a minimum at least one cutter, maybe two, in a tool catalog. So let's say you've never built a tool catalog. No problem. Anytime you've built any type of a cutter and you've placed it into the resource area, you'll be good in that. And so once you put 3 or 2 or 1 or 50 tools underneath this resource area, which you can always add more by taking advantage of the auxiliary toolbar where you can create as many tools as you wish, so that you can just select here on End Mill and start defining your next cutter. You can also right-click and duplicate items. You do have to go into the NC Resources area, and you can then duplicate a resource, so you can then change it. It puts a number 1 after it, and then you can change the name and modify it. So once you have one or multiples of these here, you simply select the one you want to send to a catalog, or you can use the Shift key and select as many as you wish, and then all you have to do is right-click, come down to NC Resources, and then you'd use this area where it says Send to Catalog. And then you can either build a brand new catalog by providing a new name, or you can just add them to an existing catalog. So this is the graphical method. There are other methods, such as using an Excel spreadsheet and things of that nature, but this is probably the quickest and fastest way to just get something there fast. So once you do send something to the catalog, one of the key items that you're going to need in order to build this or put a process into the catalog is you're going to need to know the name of your catalog, whatever you happen to call it. So you need one catalog, and you need to know the name of that catalog, and you need a minimum of at least one cutting tool in the catalog. So if you have that, then you're all set as far as tooling. Of course, you can add more tooling as time goes on. And it is important that items are stored underneath the manufacturing branch, wherever you happen to have that set up. Manufacturing here is tools for all the cutting tools, and we're going to see another folder called manufacturing processes. So, where is that set up? Well, that's always managed under your tool options. You can make your way to the machining area, and you'll find that when you go to the resources, this is where you declare the path. Now, I happen to have mine stored underneath the user's train folder, and there's a folder there named manufacturing. It's required that the folder named manufacturing has to be there. The system goes to the directory that you specify here, and it looks for a folder called manufacturing, and that's where everything ends up getting stored at. Okay, so how do we actually add an operation to the situation? So what I would recommend starting with is a new process file. So you just do File, New, and just go to Process, and just say OK, so you have an empty one in front of you. Then from here, I would save that. I would do a File, Save As, and where you want to save it to, as I mentioned, mine area was under User Train. Under the User Train, you'd look for the Manufacturing folder, and that's where you'll find the tools. That's where all the tool catalogs go, and there'll be an area called Processes. You double-click on Processes, and then you give the process a name. So with that, we just, I'll call this rand dash October 7, and just say save. Okay. Fail, said the username. Oh. That one kind of caught me by surprise. Looks like it did save it. I was just surprised to get a message about licensing. That's when there's a surprise. Okay. So, but it looks like we have our process, and to verify that things are still moving along just fine. Well, some of the, because I have so many files open right now, that's why some of the different messages were coming up there. Okay. So with that, here's the RAN one right here that says it is now. So I'm getting messages about some of the other stuff that I have open right now. Okay. So to actually build these operations, we do not use this tree over here very much at all. And that can be a little different because you're used to doing everything in the machining world underneath this tree. You know, now we just kind of ignore it. And we're going to be looking for a toolbar, which has two icons in it, which happens to be named Machining Process. So that means if you right-click on one of these icons, its actual name is Machining Process. And it has two icons, and we're going to be using the first one to open up a window where we add the operations, and then we have an organizational command underneath that. So we're going to go ahead and start using this. We just click here. And by clicking here, we'll open up the process window. There we go. And this is where we would create and manage the commands. And then we can start putting in our organizational branches. So you can put as many of these here as you wish. You can delete them. So the idea here is that you would then right-click on these and go into Properties and name them for the proper item that you're trying to manage, such as Chamfer's. I'll just call it Chamfer's dash slots. Go. And I'll right-click on this one and go into Properties and just name this one something similar. There we go. And if I don't need these other ones, I can just delete them. Don't have quite that many. There we go. Get rid of them. I'll make this a little bit larger. So this is where we do all our work. Now I can copy and paste machining operations from other locations. If I already used the machining operation, it's exactly what I want to use. Or I can actually just come over here to the tree, click on Profile, click here, and then it brings up the menu. But you'll notice there's only 4 tabs, not 5, because the Tool tab is not here. So this is where then I can switch this to that I want not between 2 planes, and I want to not use between 2 planes. I want to actually use between 2 curves. There we go. And this is where then I can put in all, to get the chamfer to have the tool be positioned in the correct place that it breaks that edge, because there's no actual chamfer there, is we just put in the necessary values to accomplish that, such as I know if I offset on a contour by 0.098, that works out well, and I need to drop down in the Z, which I can do here by double-clicking here, and I need it to drop down about a negative 0.07. I just need to put those in once and then not worry about it. I just know that every time I grab a certain chamfer tool and select an edge of chamfer, I'm going to end up with the correct chamfer size because these edges, these values are already here, and so I don't have to worry about them again. Also, I want to start on the out side, so I change that to out, and this to out. And I'll just put in a value quick for here, something like just 0.3. There we go, and we'll have that done. And then from there, I can also take care of my feed rates. So if there's certain feed rates I want to use, maybe I just want to cut everything at 20 inches a minute, so I can just go ahead and just set all these to whatever value I want them to be. for all that. So I don't have to worry about it each time. And I just want the spindle to come on at 3,000 RPM. And then I can go to my macro area and say, well, I want to approach on a circle from a safety plane. So then I could change the circle size to whatever I happen to need it to be. I'll put in 0.4 and make sure I activate it. And then do the same thing for the retract. Retract off from a circle to a safety plane. Double click here. I'll make that 0.4 also. So I have this all taken care of now. So I just say OK. So now my machining operation is ready to be captured and brought into when I need it. Now, probably the most difficult part of this entire process is the tool query, because the tool is not stored with the actual machining operation. It's retrieved. The system does a search for it and retrieves it from a catalog. So by double-clicking on this query, so you will have to take the time to expand your tree out. You see the tooling query, and then double-click on it. And from here, this is where I mentioned you had to have your tool catalog existing, because one of the things you're going to have to do first is let the system know what tool catalog it should search in. And if you haven't built a tool catalog yet or have no idea what the name of it is, then you're going to run into kind of a roadblock and not be able to go any further. So we happen to know our tool catalog is named RAND Tools. And how do we want, what tool do we want to look for? Do we look for an end mill or chamfer? And I actually want to look for a chamfer tool. So we do have to set what type of a tool we're going to look. Also up here at the top, you can look for entire tool assemblies. That means with the holder and the cutter. Or usually what it defaults to is just strictly only looking for the cutter. Once we've done that, then we have to identify what are we going to search for as far as the tool parameters. Do we want to look for the nominal diameter? Do we want to look for number of flutes? Or the nice simple search to start with, just to get familiar with what's going on, is just name. And it's just providing the name of the tool. So once you set this to name, you just come down here and then key in the name of the tool. Now, some items that we have to mention about the name. If you do create tool names with spaces in them, it is recommended that you put the double quotes and then put in the name of the tool. And this is where I found sometimes in another window I've had to, because this has to match exactly. Otherwise, what will happen is that during the process of bringing in the operation, you'll just get a message that it can't locate the tool in the catalog. And it's usually something along this lines that it's, and that's probably some of the first things I ran into when I was getting familiar with this myself, is that typing in the name the very first time and having the search work on the first time didn't happen for me. It took me a couple tries until I finally got it exactly correct. Also worked out that many of my tools I was creating the names without any spaces in them. I was using underscores and dashes, and that was coming from my old days of being around Unix workstations where putting names or creating names or files with spaces in them is kind of not a good thing to do in the Unix world. But in the personal computer world, it's very common to do. So there we have that. So now we have the name, and I'm just going to use the arrow here to move it up. And so now the system is going to, when it comes time to copy that operation in, it's going to search this tool catalog. It's going to look for a countersink, which actually I don't want the, yeah, it should come in as a countersink. And it'll pick up that tool right there. And so now we just say, OK. Now, to edit this, you can select this and use this arrow will bring it back down so I can edit. You can delete the entire field. I'm just going to say OK. Also, I find something very handy when you're trying to remember, was that really the name of the tool? Is that you can always come down here to, at the bottom, it happens to be at the bottom next to where the catalog is Import Tools. And what you can then do is make your way to like the chamfer tools for the RAND tools and see if you actually have that, if that tool is actually there. So I got chamfer. Actually, what I want is the actual chamfer tool. So the tool type that I selected there earlier, the search isn't going to work out because I actually selected, this is actually, well, it's a counter bore. That's what it is, it's a counter bore. And that's the name of it. So this is usually something I wind up doing right away when it fails. So I come back here and double check this. Okay, that's that particular tool, countersink, counter bore, and with the countersink, and that's the name it has. So that in that way I can come back down here, go here to countersink, there, and then yes, okay, so it's a countersink, and that's the name. So that is the item that'll probably frustrate you the most, is that you'll go to bring this in and you'll get this messages about the search in the tool catalog didn't work. And that's usually where the frustration comes. With that, I could create another one, but what I'd like to do next is show how to store this, because I could actually start doing the next one right underneath this. So one of the things that we're going to want to take place is to do a file save of our machining process. So that has now been saved. And once that has been saved, then we right-click on our process branch here, and we go down to selected objects, and we're going to use this item here, which is save in catalog. So once we complete that, we will have the process saved, and it'll now be available for use. So with that, I'm going to save it to the catalog. Now we're doing this for the very first time, so the catalog doesn't exist. So we're going to go here, and we're going to switch it to a new catalog, because we're doing something brand new. And we're going to use the 3 dots or the ellipsis to go out, and we want to make sure that it gets, we stored the machining process underneath manufacturing and processes. And I recommend storing the catalog with the same name in the same place, in the same folder. So as I backspace that out of there, I'm just going to use October 7. Go. And those make it exactly the same. The only reason for having these the same is just that you can locate what catalog goes with what machining process in that folder. That's the only reason for that. So there, and say OK. So with that, it's been saved. So basically what I wound up doing was, now the next time you do this, though, you would right-click and you'd say send to catalog. You'd have this set on existing. You make sure the name here, that way it matches this name up here. And then you just say OK, and it says it already exists in the catalog. You want to overwrite it, and I'll say yes, and it now has it there. So if I actually physically go to that location, such as if I make my way to the user training, manufacturing area, that folder, and go to the processes, and then sort these by date, I actually have the catalog and the process. So when I first started, I demonstrated how you could just manually copy and paste between machining processes. Well, this method I've shown here with a catalog is actually doing the same thing. It's just that the catalog acts as a middleman in the whole process. That you are in reality doing a copy and paste, but the catalog does the management of displaying the items to be copied and aiding you in pasting them and where they need to go. So catalog files are extremely small because there's really nothing in them. That's why they're only 13 KB, and most of the information is being stored in the process. So in reality, even though you're retrieving it from the catalog, it's actually going to this cat process file, and that's where it's getting the information from. So technically, you could open this cat process file and go in and change a feed rate from 30 to 35 inches a minute, and the next time that somebody used the catalog interface to grab that machining operation, it would have the new feed rate in it, because nothing really gets put into the catalog. It's basically pointers. So with that, and just now, so now that that happens to exist, we can move from there. And that is kind of the general process that's involved. So we go here to our chat. Look at that, and we'll And to actually just show retrieving that catalog would be my last little item here as we, so I'm just going to activate the window that I was working on earlier, which was this part here. So now I would select, actually I just come down here and select on the icon, but now it's going to the RAN.process. I would just change it to using the one that's a RAN October 7 catalog. And it would, now it only shows that item in the list. And then I would say I want to insert it here, and then I would say OK, and now that it came in. Now, one of the first things I checked, if there was a problem getting the tool, I would have got an error message right away. It would immediately. Also, another situation that can come up, if you do a search for tools rather than using names, because there's many other methods such as searching for nominal diameter of the tool, checking for corner radiuses and things like that. In that method, there could be the possibility of locating maybe 3 options in the catalog that meet the criteria that you're searching for instead of searching by name. And then the system will ask which one of the 3 it located, of the 3 cutters that meet the search criteria that you want to use, or if it didn't find anything at all. And so here it did find the tool, and I've always been very happy if I can at least get the tools located, because many of the other things are easy enough to take care of from there without too many problems. So I can select this edge, and just maybe I'll do a circle one with this one. There, looks good. And then just do my replay around there. So I didn't have to worry about how much to offset it, how much to drop the tool down. It's because I'm capturing a custom operation, and the way I'm ready to go. So this method also opens you up to many other possibilities as far as automation. There's many things that we can have the system start doing for us automatically by examining the geometry that we're going to be machining. We can have it bring in multiple operations at once. We're putting in threaded holes so that if we need to do a spot drill or a center drill and a drill, those can all be brought in at one time and then programmed that way. Are some of the things there. So really what it involves is just opening up an empty process file, locating these 2 little icons here, opening up the menu, using the second icon, because the first one opens up the window, the second one opens up starts introducing in the organizational branches, so I can put 13 tapped holes and keep adding my machining operations underneath that if needed. Okay. And that's a real quick overview. And this is also available if you happen to have access to the education material that we've used in any of our training classes. There are examples of that existing there. So in the very first book that we use within our training course, which is the NC infrastructure book, NCI. It's the thickest of the group of the books we use. And you'll find there that there is a machining process guide area. It's roughly around page 193. So in the NC infrastructure book, if you go to page 193, you'll find some additional information there. And there's even a detailed exercise or step. So in the back of that book, you will be able to locate on page 44 a detailed step-by-step that's in the NC infrastructure book that will also show some of the things that I just discussed here. Part of our training material that we do use for our NC manufacturing course. Very good. So the toolbar where I did access the machining process application does have some additional icons near it. One happens to be the standard drilling options. And when that is activated, what that happens to be doing is actually going to one of the process files that is out in that process area so that you can, and basically you can actually go out to that folder and find some of these there. Now, these are really designed that you're it references the manufacturing view. So that means it wants you to, if you're using drilling, it wants you to have already selected the locations where you want to drill, which is what I did earlier. I selected the 4 holes there that I put the chamfer around, and that built a drilling pattern. And so the idea is when it says manufacturing view, it's referring to that item. So that, so when I talk about features, we are referencing this toolbar here, machining feature, and this is where we can build our drilling patterns or basically the objects we want to machine, such as prismatic areas. And then by doing the view, it will display those items. And then from this toolbar is where you can then identify by right-clicking here at the top how you want to display those items. I have this running right now. It's not bringing up the menu. There we go. So I want to display it by features, by patterns, by machining operations, by tools. That can also be helpful. In this particular case, I'm thinking about changing the 1-inch in diameter end mill and what machining operations are using the 1-inch in diameter end mill. So by using the view toolbar, I can display all the operations by tools. So the 1-inch diameter end mill is being used by all these machining operations here. So by right-clicking at the top, I can change, do I want to display things by operations, by tooling? Tooling is what I'm doing right now. So this is now doing it by operations. All the pocketing operations, some of them have been renamed, are now being displayed here. All the deep hole operations are here, all the cycle. So here it does it by operations. So it's really just kind of different ways of displaying the information and also displaying features to be machined. It allows me to do that. So I expand this out. So and the features are stored underneath the actual CAT part that they're associated with. So there are pockets and so here that I can actually bring out of hide. Shift down to here. Bring them out of hide. Go. So now these features are visible. So it allows me to do that, which can be very helpful with the catalog, because if I have standard machining practices that I want to do on these features right here, now that they've been identified as a feature, I can go to the catalog. I can select my catalog that has the machining methods that I want to use, which might be this one here. And I want to machine pockets that are open, that are over 2.5 inches wide, so I select that. And I say I want to insert it in here. And then I can just say I want to machine this feature, and this feature. So those 3 selected, all I have to do now is say OK, and the system will then go ahead and program those. And they're dropped in. So that's the advantage of having these things in the catalog, even though you don't have to use the features, as I just demonstrated here. Once you get familiar with maybe just putting one machining operation there and getting it to find one cutter, you're starting down the road where potentially you could really start automating more and more items as the situations arise. So in this particular case, the people wanted to be able to take a roughing cut, essentially leaving material on the side and the floor of the pocket, and then come back with a different tool to finish it. So that's why there's some of these that are called R for the roughing cut, F for the finish cut. So the roughing cut already had built into it the amounts that they wanted to leave there, and then the system automatically grabbed and put a finish pocket operation there with the items all set to 0. So it accomplished that for us. So building a feature is, so the features were built earlier by just simply using the feature toolbar, and we just come into here and select prismatic feature, and it basically brings up everything that you typically would see in the geometry tab, and you just start identifying, okay, this is the bottom of the pocket, and it picked up the wall, and this is the top. Then you can give it a name, and you say okay, and you've built a feature. And then the idea is that you can have that feature selected as you're retrieving the tools or the machining operations from the catalog, and the system will automatically populate the geometry area with of your machining operation with the feature. But again, you don't have to do that on the first time that you're getting familiar with this. And that's the advantage of maybe taking this approach over doing the simply copy and paste. Because the copy and paste, that's pretty much it. You're going to copy, and you can paste. You're not going to automatically associate features. There's not any access that you can do as far as using a little bit of the knowledgeware side of CATIA to do conditional checks. That's not possible in the copy and paste. But in this environment from a catalog, it is possible. And so once you head down that road, you've set up a foundation that when the time is appropriate, you can automate it even more. With that, also once all these operations show up, sometimes the order in which they're put in the tree may not be the most efficient method for machining. So there are tools available to Autosort. So you can then set up priorities based on using the Autosort tool here as far as how to sort the operations by operation type, by diameter tools, because maybe once you have a certain tool in the spindle, you want to machine everything you can with that. And so in this particular case, these operations, it's going roughing, then finishing, then back to roughing, and then finishing. So when I have the end mill and the spindle to do all the roughing, I want to do all the pockets, all the roughing of all the pockets at once. So I don't have to keep switching. So what I'm going to do is select the operations that I want to go to this one here. I'm going to hold down on the control key. Select this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then hit the apply button. Okay. And I'm going to turn off the sort by angle one. And then have the system go through and sort those for me automatically. Turn off by angle. For some of the 5-axis stuff, you can rotate by table angle and so on. Yeah, that's number 1. That's number 1. Usually I just do the entire. Sequence by angle. Distance. I'll start by distance is the one. Okay, let's turn that one off and that one off. There we go. The tree got smaller because it went through and reorganized the operations. So earlier, if there was an operation and it was switching back and forth between different tools. So now what it did is it went through and said, okay, this tool's in the spindle. I'm going to take all the machining operations that use that cutter and put them all right here. So when that tool gets loaded into the machine, I want to do all the cutting I can with that tool. Then when this tool goes into the spindle of the machine, I want to do all the cutting of these operations. So the Autosort goes through and does that. Because I realized when you were going to retrieve things from the catalog, where they end up in the tree may not be the most efficient order for the way they're going to be machined. And you don't want to have to manually right-click and cut and paste and move them around. So they created the Autosort that you can put in the necessary rules. That's what the second icon does, is it sets up rules of how you want these operations to be sorted, and it will go through and sort them for you automatically. And of course, you can go in yourself afterwards if you want to tweak it and be able to move some up or down or adjust them to different locations if you wish. In that, when retrieving a lot of machining operations from the catalog, it's very common to have to auto-sort them to get them to appear in the most efficient order. Because once you have an 1.5 inch diameter end mill in the spindle of the machine, you want to cut everything that you planned on cutting with that end mill while it's loaded in the spindle. And then go get a different tool to cut all the other areas. That way we wind up with all the roughing cuts here and all the finish cuts So hopefully with that, you've had a chance to see some of those items and hopefully have some opportunity in the future maybe to apply those.